Welcome, everyone. And I've been quite excited for this panel, especially, and we have a fair share of young audience out of whoever is remaining here. And I would encourage the younger audience to sort of get really into the session because we have a lot for you in this.
Sohini, how about we quickly talk about the topic here once again so that they are familiar what exactly it is that we are discussing. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic at hand for this particular panel discussion is engaging younger audiences, strategies for media organizations. Once again, requesting everyone to kindly settle down. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sahib. Right, so before I start with the panel, I want to get a show of hands in this room. How many of you are there on Instagram? Superb. Twitter, you're all journalism students, are superb. So I'm guessing a fair share of you are there present on social media. How many of you consume news on social media over news channels? See, I think that's a good segue to our conversation right here, that right now, younger audiences are on social media consuming news and consuming what's out there. I'll start with right from that end. So can you tell me about the change you've seen in the way the younger audience is consuming news as compared to, say, the last 5 years, if we can have a look back?
Thank you, Sohini. Thank you, Batra Saab. Thank you, E4M, for calling me here. So, the topic of this panel discussion, as it states, it is how, how do media organizations must attract young audience. And the question you asked is, how is it changing? I believe it's changing every day, every second. More and more younger audience are now focusing towards gathering their information via social media. Social media is your question, if I'm not wrong. Why is this happening is because that is what has become their primary source of information. Students सुबह उठते हैं और सबसे पहले Instagram, that is their in their subconscious minds, अपने आप जो thumb है, अंगूठा है, it opens the Instagram app, and that's where they consume their information from. So first and foremost, I would say a large chunk of the younger audience, as we call it. पहले तो since I've led Z Digital for quite an year, मुझे कभी ये नहीं समझ में आया कि एक्चुअल में यंगर ऑडियंस है क्या. Is it the audience between the age of 18 to 35 years, as we used to state it traditionally? Abhi, now I am 31 and I find myself way too different from the, from my younger cousins, the interns and trainees that we see in our newsroom. So I'm not sure what exactly a young audience is. Yeah, young generation, we might say कि 18 से 35 साल वाले होते हैं.
Everyone's young at heart, right?
So exactly, that's where I was coming from, कि younger generation वो number वाली है या younger generation वो है that is young at heart. So if we are discussing about the number, I believe उनका जो information का source है वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ social media रह गया, and they are more interested in getting the information rather than getting the news. Now, getting information is different. Maybe कुछ एक JNU के IR students वाली जो एक lobby होती है, या lobby is not the right word, I mean जो एक set of students होता है, maybe they are the ones who are seeking news every morning, or maybe the IS aspirants, or maybe my friends at IIM or IITs. But what I believe is कि वो chunk जो है वो शायद 5% या 2% का रह गया है, जो actually जिसके back of the head ये है that yes, I really need to consume news, not information. And misinformation is also related because rather than the source of information, we these days say कि social media is the source of misinformation. अब क्योंकि information वहीं से consume हो रही है, so there are lots and lots of players, political minds, parties, businesses that themselves are creating misinformation. So what I would advise that the way your question was is कि younger audience को एक हिस्सा अपने दिन के समय का रखना चाहिए to consume pure news, and that pure news they should be mindful कि वो कहाँ से आ रही है, किस source से आ रही है. Rather than knowing things in this era, I believe is not knowing things, not knowing the wrong facts has somewhere down the line become more important than knowing the facts. So this is what I believe. I think that somehow answers your questions that how younger audience should consume their information.
Thank you so much, Aman. I'll come to you, Chetty, now. So like Aman mentioned, right, the most of them, like almost all of them are on social media and consuming news on social media. How would you suggest to then curate that sort of a news so, you know, the younger audience feels like, you know, attracted to read that, right? And as compared to, you know, how the older generation is glued to a TV with a ticker going on or something like that. So how do you think news should be curated for the younger audience on social?
Well, thank you for having me here, first of all. Before I answer how news should be curated for the younger audience, I must say that the younger audience that are tuned into social media need to realize the right handles they are curating for themselves. So if you're on Instagram, you need to follow the right handles which come with credible amount of information and not handles which are there for propaganda, or there are some very obvious polarization that we see in news today. All of you would agree with me. Make sure that you understand where the funding of these news channels really comes from. So when it comes to news, you have to really be very, very careful where the funding of news channels really comes from, because that would then decide what you're consuming is biased or not biased. Coming back to how to curate news or any form of journalistic content on social media, a background, I've been a financial journalist, I've been a political journalist for many, many years, and now, of course, with Manifest, I'm curating a luxury and couture news platform. So I do realize that when it comes to funding of luxury, couture, and lifestyle platforms, that's a different ballgame altogether. And that can never be mixed up with news which is in pure public interest and not just what's interesting to the public. And that's a demarcation that all young journalist students should know. To curate news, to answer your first question, for the younger generation, first you must understand how much their attention span is. There is a certain sect of audiences today whose attention span is becoming lower and lower, and that's more so with the Gen Z. And not all Gen Z, because we've done multiple focus groups before we launched Manifest to realize the consumer behavioral patterns as well. There are some who are getting up every day in the morning and opening Instagram as the first thing, or WhatsApp as the first thing, or Twitter, or any other social media platform that comes in handy. The minute you want to cater to the crowd that consumes news on social media handle, news channels, organizations, content providers need to make sure that the long-form content that they are creating, whether on their website, whether it is on their legacy media channel as a TV show, or whether it is on print, needs to be bulleted, summarized, facts should be presented, and you can easily now do stories as carousel formats. So what I'm increasingly encouraging my team also now is that there is a long-form print story that we do that deep dives into the ethos of what the story really is. Then we do a shorter version of it for website, which kind of gives you an overview, news/feature-ish kind of a story. Then you trickle the same story down to Instagram in a pattern which becomes shorter, which means you create a carousel of the post of the ethos of what you're trying to say in terms of salient bullet points. So lot lately you must be seeing many channels or many handles doing carousel posts with just information, and you just keep going round and round the carousel posts, and you will be able to tell what the story really is without reading the 1,500 word story which has been actually published. So that's one practice. The other practice I would say that media organizations can now do is hop on to this video trend. Videos today, through our focus group survey as well, we realize are a very big part of a news consumption pattern today. Videos are something that one can really capitalize on very well. And when you create these videos also, please remember that they need to be snappy. You don't have to go on and on and on and let the video breathe, because the attention span of the Gen Z today is something that you need to be very careful about if you're looking to put your point across in that sense. So videos is one thing, Instagram carousels is the other thing. And like I said, I would stick my neck out and say that print is not dead, and I'll come back to it later why.
Thank you so much, Chaiti. In fact, you've touched upon a very pertinent point, and I was going to pose this to the audience again, our young audience here, about watching news and reading news, right? So can you, again, I'll come back to the audience here. Can you show me a show of hands about how many of you like to watch news over read news? And how many of you are into just reading news? Yeah, we'll come to Q&A. We'll have Q&A, don't worry. So like we see, there are a fair share of more hands when it comes to watching. And I'll come to Gaurav next with this. Gaurav, how are you optimizing at your organization the use of social media and curating this format of news that they are more interested to watch? And how are you sort of optimizing social media to deliver news?
Thanks, Sohini. I'll take a step back, considering we're discussing about youth and journalism per se. I don't think we should get lost only in the world of social media. And I don't think we should just restrict the youth with that one single label. It's not fair to them. See, traditionally, formats have existed. It's not only news, right? The format of news is one, but if you look at the format of movies, that's changing. The format of audio consumption is changing. The way people have read books is changing. So it's not only news and journalism in isolation. What we need to understand is the way the youth is consuming anything is changing, right? So we have to figure out what is it that they want to consume, how do they want to consume it, when do they want to consume it, where do they want to consume it, and through what devices do they want to consume it. It's not, while I agree with Chaiti to a certain extent that the attention span's gone down, but again, if you look at the kind of consumption that's happening from Indian devices, Indian IPs on YouTube, and especially on the kind of content that is very hardcore to the younger audiences, you'll realize that, long form content might be doing a lot more than short form content.
I actually agree with that. I said a part of the Gen Z today, a certain small little part, for them the consumption pattern has...
I didn't mean to contradict.
Yes,
What I mean is that we have to figure out what is it that they're seeking, right? Whether it's information, whether it's knowledge, whether it's news, what is it that they're seeking? Eventually, everybody is trying to make a sense of world around them, right? A lot of people who I've interacted with in the past, and I've spoken to them about news, they say we don't consume news as much, right? I'm talking about college students, school students. The moment you speak to them about a certain topic, they know it all. And then you ask them, so how do you know if you don't consume news? We came across a link on which we read about it. For them, that's content. For them, that's information, right? So what we need to understand is that we need to get rid of these labels, right? As a marketeer, that is how I like to see. And, when we're talking about journalism, it's hardcore content. But then from a consumer lens point of view, I like to see things outside in. And that is where I see that, across every category, that's not only news or media, but across category, we need to get rid of these labels when we talk about the younger audiences, and then try and decode what is it that they're seeking. They're far more busy than what a 20-year-old or a 15-year-old was 10 years back. So some of the traditional forms might not be relevant anymore. And again, across category, if you see, brands who've been there for decades are finding themselves in a spot where they're looking to reinvent themselves, and they want to be relevant for the younger audiences. So everybody needs to go back to the drawing board and figure out that even if, say, we've got a full ecosystem, how do we take a pertinent information, news, etc., that they're seeking through different forms in different ways, communicating possibly the same thing, but for a different mode of consumption at different point of time. Somebody who's heading to the college in the morning might have less time to consume that information, might, a bullet format carousel might work. But when they're seeking something maybe at 8 p.m. on YouTube, when they're free, you can go long form. So you have to understand how this entire ecosystem works to take a broader view and then create a plan for the youth is what my view is.
So which platform do you see maximum young audience coming to? For in your case, is it digital? How do you see? Where do you see your maximum young audience coming?
So NDTV has a wide network of, I would say, platforms that we cater the audiences through. Again, I would say that different content pieces work on different platforms, sometimes at different point of time in the day. So there's no one clear answer to say that the younger audience is only on Instagram watching reels in a short form. I would not put a statement like that out at all.
Right. Anisha, coming to you. Now, you are in front of the camera. You are speaking to the young audience, right? Can you give me how do you sort of adapt yourself to different kinds of news that's going out, and sort of how do you prepare yourself about how you're going to present yourself to the young audience? Do you need a different kind of a preparation when you're talking to them versus the older audience, or what's it like for you?
Yeah, first up, thank you so much for having me here. Yes, it does need a different type of preparation because the kind of delivery that they want and they get comfortable with is different for different set of people. So just coming to the point that Gaurav was making, that of course you can't generalize what everybody is consuming, but you need to understand the heart of the matter as to why they are consuming content. And for younger people, I think there are 2 or 3 main reasons that they're doing that. First up is to learn. So they don't want anything which is preachy, but they are looking for information and facts. So as long as you can provide that, they will come to you. So they're not only looking for, the first hit of information. It's not like always the breaking news, but they also want to understand the subject these days. So it's not just only opinions, but also getting the facts right. They're also looking to understand a few things, and that's where the longer format comes, because I'll just give you an example at ET now. Markets are doing very well right now, and a lot of young audience is getting into it, and we thought that maybe a part of the, audience would like to get stock tips per se, and, which stock to buy, etc. And we perhaps did a bit of that, and then we did a very long format chat, which was with a very veteran investor who just taught how to pick up stocks. It was a long chat of 30 to 40 minutes, and we thought we have lost the audience. Actually, it got the maximum amount of views because it's not only to get the answers, they also need to get the information and the learning. So learning is also important, and that's how you have to dissect as to what they're looking at for that point of time. And to the point that Chaiti was also making, I think the cheat code of doing this is to perhaps put the same information in different formats. And right now, with the help of technology, you have the backing of doing that. So the same content can be made into a long format article. A video could be broken down into certain pieces, and you'll put only the bite-sized information as each of the answers. You can perhaps do a podcast with the same, because there are a lot of users for that. So I think the good thing is that the catchment area has increased, because you have people consuming it via Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and apart from the traditional mediums. So you just have to bait them into coming, and then perhaps you can kind of catch their attention by making sure that they're getting something out of the information and not just mindless debates per se.
So they are sitting through a longish
They are.
video,
As long
right?
as the information is something that is helpful to them, they are learning and they're willing to kind of understand.
Superb. Next, I'll come to Anud right now about the emerging technologies, right? There's AI and whatever, so much of technologies coming into play. What are some of the, say, both challenges and opportunities that you're perceiving in using these technologies to reach this audience?
So first of all, I would want to reach the audience which is present right now. Attention, please. So before I start off with this very interesting topic, I have to tell you something briefly about myself, that I started my career at the same age as you guys are. I was 23 and मैंने Economic Times में पहले अपना काम शुरू किया था as a reporter. So मेरे boss ने मुझे clear cut instructions हम सबको दी थी कि listen guys, 4 पैराग्राफ होने चाहिए जो इम्पोर्टेंट है, राइट? वो पढ़ते हैं लोग, उसके बाद का तो भूलते हैं, then they move on, right? So we learned it that the first 4 paragraphs have to be super crisp. उसके बाद हम लोग पुराना निकाल के डाल देते थे. So now what happened was that era where the first 4 paragraphs were important. Then I left Economic Times, started my own digital company, and I realized अब तो वो 4 paragraphs पे भी कोई नहीं पढ़ता है. Right, the youngsters, they're happy to have a short text, short video format. तो 3 लाइनों में उनको सब चीज़ें समझानी पड़ती हैं जो वो समझ हो नहीं सकती, because it leads to a lot of misinformation. So I keep on try to keep telling my team that, like, you know, let's have something little longer. But at end of the day, what works? The analytics show that only 30-second reel जो होगी या 30-second video होगा, that's what is selling out. That's what you guys are watching. More than 1 minute, it is not digestible to this age group. And now coming to the technology, I feel this generation, the Gen Z, is born in digital era. They know how to integrate technology in their lives seamlessly. I have a 13-year-old niece, उसको सब chat GPT के बारे में पता है. I mean, you guys know आज अगर कुछ presentation बनानी है, how to use chat GPT, क्या डाला, keywords, and how to make it. So I have to learn from you and not the other way out, right? You guys are completely at it. You know how to make use of AI. You know what chat GPT is. So in my team, I'm looking for youngsters who can actually understand the new phenomena. What is the new phenomena? I have to learn from you guys. I mean, it's like that. So I feel there are a lot of challenges of the new technology. There can be a lot of fake information flowing. There can be a lot of misinformation coming out. But at the same time, there is no other way I see other than the short format text and the video which goes into the minds and which gets the maximum viewership from the younger generation. So yes, there are complications, but I have tried every bit as a social media consultant, as a person who runs a digital company. Yes, in politicians, there is no way out. उनको लंबा लिखना है, उनको लंबा बोलना है. But आज की डेट में भी देख लो, राहुल गांधी के बारे में आप 30 सेकंड का वो एक निकालोगे क्लिप. नरेंद्र मोदी जी के बारे में भी निकालोगे, वो 30 सेकंड का क्लिप निकालोगे. So end of the day, what is working? The short clips. So पूरा घूम फिर के end of the day, duration is becoming very important to get the attention span of these people who are sitting at the back.
But you know, I'll interject there because I think while they go for these shorter formats, but if you embed a long format video for somebody who's really interested, that also works very well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So I am not against it. Since the question was what is working, what is not working, for me as a digital company, I know the analytics, this is working for me, right? But at the same time, I handle a lot of work of politicians. There, I cannot move with this 30-second video because उसमें आप message ही नहीं दे पाएंगे. So you have to have a long form video also. So we keep it like Chaiti also said, like, you know, सभी अलग-अलग format का काम चलता है. So social media is not restricted to small short form, but attention span is only that much. आप अपनी तरफ से सब formats देते हैं.
Right. Thank you so much, Anu and Anisha. I can't help but notice this one point that I think all of you mentioned was of misinformation and, you know, how there needs to be due diligence. Again, coming back here, how many of you at the back, again, our young audience, after going through a news, say, or you're scrolling on Instagram and you see something from some handle, do your due diligence after consuming it? How many of you know how to do the due diligence? See, I think the problem lies there. So I would like, this is an open question to the panel. I'll start with Aman again. How do you think this due diligence needs to be done? Because clearly, young audience is not aware of how they would know that the news they're consuming is right.
So that's a very tough question, and the answers are tougher. Uh, as I have a 4-year-old son, so now we are in a age of transition. It's an age of media boom, and especially this past decade, and more precisely, the 5 or 6 years that have passed, right? Each and every day, the way information and news that was being consumed has changed each and every day. This is what I believe. As my fellow panelists rightly said, that you know, some of us as publishers are making short videos. Some of us as publishers are making long form videos. Same goes for the text. We have a incredible company called In Shorts that was founded a few years back, and now they have a turnover of good 200 and 300 crores. But then they founded another company called Public that did not work for some reason. So, you know, the confusion. Now, I am first speaking on my responsibility and my part as a publisher, and then I will come to the question that how should they do their due diligence, or the purpose of this question is कि कैसे youth तक सही जानकारी पहुँचे. This is what we all want as a common interest. Now, why I said I have a 4-year-old son, तो अब जब वो बच्चा बड़ा होगा, right? Being a father, I'll be there to tell him that, boss, okay, this particular medium called Instagram, it's there so that you can know about what your, fellow classmates are doing, what your cousins are doing, what your father is doing, who has gone to what vacation, and etc. etc. All that informal information that he would need, right? Now, if I talk about myself or if I talk about our present youth, they are a product or they are an outcome of a generation that was being experimented, right? वो जो होते हैं ना साइंटिस्ट जो चूहों पे वो कर रहे होते हैं, that generation is there right in front of you. I'm so sorry to use such algo. So now, जब न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने का वक्त था तब मैं न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ रहा था, लेकिन फिर आ गया सोशल मीडिया. Me and my fellow young audience, they started using social media, right, for information. But suddenly what happened is कि me as a publisher, because I saw that, okay, my website can get some good traffic via social media or via Facebook or via Twitter. Initially, it started like that. We used to share some good news stories and we used to get traffic out of that. We started doing that. Facebook and other social media giants also realized that, okay, this way they can make some good traffic. And so they also started promoting the media houses, the websites that we used to run. This is how it started. Who was the consumer? This young audience. They were consuming it like that. फिर आया misinformation का दौर, जो question आपने पूछा. Again, more experiments. There came a digital boom. I personally believe it came after the Reliance Jio. They launched a very cheaper, or you can call it कि एकदम free वाला internet pack, right? After that, everyone had a phone in their hands. Everyone got to know. We remember that 8-month or 9-month era. Entire youth had gone mad after TikTok, right? There were some other apps as well. हर कोई TikTok बना रहा था. सब TikTok बना रहे थे. Ultimately किसी ने बोल दिया कि कुछ हुआ कि Chinese incursion and this and that. That app got banned, but that activity was never banned. The same audience shifted to Instagram, YouTube Shorts, Facebook. There were certain Indian versions of TikTok, right? So in that TikTok era, I as a publisher realized that यार ये short content बड़ा चलता है, ठीक? तो मुझे समझ में आया कि short content बड़ा चलता है और short content चलने में जितना पैसा मुझे hard news sell करके मिलेगा, उतना ही पैसा मुझे short news sell करके मिलेगा. It's fine that I was among the editors, but at a certain level it becomes quite the same thing. कि आपको ऊपर से कितना pressure आ रहा है. You have to deliver certain numbers. You have to deliver certain engagement, and that's how it goes ahead. So at that point in time, we were the ones who were creating information in large numbers. We were the one, not all of us, but a sizable chunk among the publishers were the ones who were creating, who had the pressure of creating information in huge number. दिन के 10 short videos से काम नहीं चलेगा. Now you have to create 50 short videos. Now when you force your team, the same team, to create more content, the quality goes down. The quality goes down, and that results in misinformation most of the time. Even if I am asked to write, let's just say 5 articles on emergency, I've covered politics, I'll be tasked to research. Despite the fact कि मैंने पूरी इमरजेंसी को 20 बार पढ़ा होगा, but still वो 22 जून था कि 23 जून था, मुझे फिर भी फैक्ट चेक करना पड़ेगा. वो फैक्ट चेक करने का टाइम मैंने अपनी टीम को दिया नहीं. तो साइजेबल चंक जो था वो मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन का अनइंटेंशनली क्रिएट हो गया. पहली चीज. दूसरी चीज इज द मिस यूज ऑफ सोशल मीडिया, इज द मिस यूज ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन. सो first, because I forced my team to create 50 and not 10 videos because my publisher wanted more revenue, it was me who did not do the job right and created the misinformation, though unintentionally. Sometimes I feel that we did it intentionally. I'm sorry to say that. I'm ready to accept it. Second is the vested interests, political parties, big tech companies, corporates. They want revenues and profits to go up. Now all these corporate parties and all these big techs have either funded news channels or they themselves have created their own avenues for news and information. So the second source of this misinformation is these social media giants. They are promoting anyone or everyone wherever they see, for so to say, for Meta, Instagram, Facebook पे आपने नया channel बनाया, and if your channel, the way this algorithm thing works, and if that channel gets some 1,000 views in the first week of its launching or its formation, you'll see automatically whatever you're putting there, because I have experimented this and I've seen this, you know that this is misinformation. Your numbers go up. When your numbers go up, your audience grows. When your audience grows, ultimately your revenue grows. And then there is this hunger in the publisher's belly कि यार और number चाहिए. तो दो तरीकों से हम intentionally और unintentionally misinformation create कर रहे हैं. The culture of more and more influencers becoming news creators, I sometimes believe is dangerous to the society because most of their information is created by a small set of individuals.
Right, I agree with you there about the influencer point. I was coming to that. Sort of, I'll come to Chaiti also with this. How do you see this impact of the social algorithms and influencers becoming these news creators? It's sort of fueling this misinformation And again, should they do their due diligence, the audience?
Well, it would be a wrong thing to say, a blanket statement to say that all influencers are creating misinformation. There are tons out there who are doing a better job than legacy media companies, to be very honest. First things first, to answer your first question, how do the youth of today stop consuming misinformation? I would say one answer, stop relying on whatever's coming on your WhatsApp. Usually, legacy media channels will have their social media handles and they do their fact checks, they do their due diligence. There are full-on processes in place. There is nothing that, at least I'm former India Today, I can tell you that, nothing that is picked up by web or social media or television really is taken without an RFA tag. RFA tag means ready for air tag, which means there has been a primary source of information where the reporters got the story. Then there's a secondary check done by the desk. Then there is a third layer of check done by the assignment desk. Once 3 times you've verified what that fact that has come to your desk is, that's when you disseminate it. When you disseminate, you can do it for television, you can do it for print, you can do it for digital, you can do it for social media. So make sure that you're relying purely on these news channels if you want to consume your news content on social media. They all have their handles. Usually they might be a little polarized to left, right. That's not the question we're talking about. We're talking about facts. Usually their facts will not be wrong. Number one. Secondly, you stop relying on WhatsApp for your information. That's no space for you to get information at all. Point number 3, you were talking about the rise of the influencers becoming newsmen. There are some who are journalists first who have become news influencers, and to my mind, they're doing a great job. There is no reason for you to not trust them if they have their teams who are ground reporting. There are very few small digital news channels that have come today that are working with smaller batch of reporters, but they are going out there and doing the primary ground reporting. If you are seeing primary ground reports, you're seeing bites, you're seeing quotes that are coming from real people, depending on which story they are covering. There is no reason for you to believe what you see is wrong, because there is ground reportage involved, and I would trust them any day as opposed to an armchair influencer who is just giving out information and doling it out by the dozen. I don't know whether that person knows his ground reality or not. But if that person comes with a team of ground reporters who's doing their primary due diligence and getting you the real facts from ground zero, you can trust them completely.
Yes.
Sonia, I'll just add here. See, the onus of fact checking, while you say that how should the youth approach it, to my mind, sometimes when you do searches here and there, you'll get whole lot of information, which again there's no ways to verify. Simplest would be to go to the Holy Grail, go to a source that is actually doing the fact check for you. Instead of trying to do the fact check yourself, if you have a trustworthy source.
But that's basically a legacy news channel if they're putting out some
No,
sort of
it's not necessarily only legacy news channel. I mean,
any broadsheet. Like you'll go to a Times of India, they're not going to get their facts wrong 99%
Yeah, so
of the
as
time.
long
I'm
as-
not saying they're perfect.
yeah, so as long as that link is appearing on the WhatsApp, but the original source is
yes.
trustworthy.
That's what I
Somebody else has done the work for you before giving you that information. So I mean, that's for me would be the first thing that you should do. Apart from then, if you have any doubts, then you should verify it across multiple platforms or multiple, websites, papers, television channels, etc. But I think going to a source that's trustworthy would be the first thing.
And
Right.
just to add
Yes,
there,
Anisha.
don't forward it before checking to what they were saying, because these days the act is first I'll forward it or like it and then I will check it. That just adds to the misinformation. So first verify it and only then act on it. Because it happens a lot in the stock markets where I'm coming from. People put in their orders or buy or sell basis the news first, and then they go and fact check, and then they are of course in a soup because the information was wrong in the first hand. It was just created because of the WhatsApp.
And
Right.
even adding to that, even if it comes from a reliable, trustworthy source, sometimes, you'll get these forwards on WhatsApp as well with a logo of a legacy news channel saying that, oh, this bridge collapsed right now, and there'll be a complete write-up as to how it collapsed just 2 days back or this morning. you need to first go back to that particular channel, that source, like he rightly said, and figure out whether that video that is being circulated is as of today or 2 days ago or not. Sometimes what happens is just to create some sort of sensationalism, you will see a lot of these WhatsApps floating around and they could be dated as old as 10 years ago. So just because it's got that logo, that doesn't mean that is exactly what has happened. So read. Any serious news consumer today, and I can say this with full confidence, people who are really interested in knowing facts, they definitely know where to go. I think we're highly underestimating the youth of today to figure out that, oh, they're falling prey to misinformation. Yes, misinformation exists, but I think they're smart enough to know to go out there to a credible source to figure out whether the information that they are consuming is right or not.
Right. Thank you so much, Chaiti. So moving a little ahead of this misinformation, the discussion we were having about print not being dead, because there is this perception that the youth is fairly on, the platforms like digital and, television also to some extent. But print, newspaper koi nahi padta. Aaj ki generation newspaper nahi padti. But I see you have a point, and I will get to the panel also with this. Why do you think print is not really dead among the youth, and what's the engagement that it's getting from the younger generation?
As of 6 months ago, I felt print is dead. I was convinced it's dead. Then I created a magazine, the Zero issue of Manifest, which was about to come out, which was a 300-page issue. I looked at it and I said, who the hell is going to read this? Like, there's so much content across the board, but who's going to be reading this? So what I did was I hired Yellow Bulbs. I made them do a focus group survey across the length and breadth of the country. And that had my target audience, which is Gen Z, with a sweet spot of 27, 28, affluent, educated, English-speaking audience of the country today. When the result of the focus group came out, I was shocked. I heard every line of what the Gen Z was saying while they were flipping through the pages of that magazine. They said the information which is here in long form, whether it is, while this is a lifestyle magazine, so I'll give you that example, whether it is on hair care, skin care, whatever, the information is backed by randomized clinical trial data. This kind of information, with the doctor's consent, with a stamp of approval, is not something which is readily available on the internet in shorter formats where they're just picking on trends and reporting on them. When I see the same information on Instagram or Twitter or any other social media handle, it's just fleeting information. I don't know whether that is going to be right for me or not. So today, the written word is something that they find editorial integrity and credibility in, and hence they get convinced to pick up that magazine and read it. After that focus group survey got done, I was stunned to know how magazines today have a place with the youth, which I was absolutely wrong about 6 months ago. Not to say that we don't do digital, not to say we're not doing videos. We're doing all of that and doing print because, well, if the confidence is coming from the written word with well-researched stories, with facts that is backing that information, then hallelujah, I don't think print is dead at all. And hence we've taken the leap and launched a print magazine with its digital arm and social media arms as well.
No, that's a very fair point. And Anu, I would like to come to you also with this. this generation is highly, very, very critical about the credibility of the news, and, and they're sort of losing, to some extent, people are losing trust on traditional. But with what Chaiti says, what would your take be on, the print medium being, amongst the younger generation? As a source of information?
So I believe in one thing very strongly, that an intelligent student, an intelligent youngster, when gets an information, would like to go and revisit a Times of India site, would like to visit a Hindustan Times site to see the veracity of the news. Lot of times, my son would say, I think this is not correct. And I would ask him why, because he said that I searched for this information on Times of India, ये मुझे मिली नहीं है. So इसका मतलब है कि there is something missing, this information is not correct. So what are we going back on? We are, for the trust factor, we are still relying on the print. We are not relying for the trust factor on social media. I run a social media company, but do you think I trust blindly what comes on social media? No. There is a golden rule in my company that any video that we use, we have to give a video credit so that there is no blame game whichever comes down to me because I am quoting that particular source. So it's a very important thing that the print is there for the veracity of the news, and print cannot go out of fashion from the perspective of the trust factor. वो मेरे लिए आज भी ज़रूरी है, वो मेरे लिए पहले भी ज़रूरी था और वो रहेगा भी. आप सोशल मीडिया, ठीक है, it's a trendy thing, it is happening, we cannot ignore it, but yes, I will still go to print for the authentic, analytic journalism.
And just to add,
Yes,
if I
Anisha.
can quickly add a couple of bites there on print media, I think the job of print media is not only to put the news out there. That's what, let's say, a lot of social media platform and TV broadcast does. But what print also brings to the table is forming opinions. Because to the point where Zaman was saying, you have to make 50 videos in a day, but you have to write one good article a day. You'll sit, research the facts as much as you can. It comes with your byline. It's your neck on the line. You do all the job there. And you also look at various facets and context to things. So print usually provides you a very balanced view of at least 3 or 4 people who have been discussed the topic with, what X is saying, what Y is saying. It forms a lot more balanced an approach versus other mediums which I think could be biased because of paucity of time, because the reaction time is so little. You'll just hit the first thing and probably not look into the multiple layers. Print has that benefit that they can look at the multiple layers and get you what is really important.
I completely agree with you here, and I personally, maybe I am an old school, but I feel I am totally sold out on the basis, the analytics, the opinions, and everything that print provides.
Right, thank you. Yes, Aman.
Sohini, I would like to, I guess, we're running out of time. I would like to leave the panel with a question, which is a larger question. How do you wish to educate or aware this generation, or insert this sentiment in this generation that you have to fact check, that whatever you've got on your WhatsApp or Instagram or social media feed, so to say, is it correct? Is it incorrect? Is it a part of propaganda? Because this is something, I think, what the question should be. Because we all have been a part of a lot of panel discussions. We meet students. The only problem that I find among ourselves, not as publishers but as individuals of this growing older generation, is this, that the younger generation that's coming, we are not able to make them aware the importance and value of the correct information. What is the answer to that? I have not been able to find an answer. Okay, I can, influence a few individuals around me, my cousins, my son, my team members. But the larger question is कि जो आ गया Facebook पे और उसने देख लिया और उसको लगा अरे ये हो गया, उसने शेयर कर दिया. शेयर करने के 3 दिन बाद उसको पता चलता है कि वो तो गलत था, फैक्ट चेक नहीं था.
It's basically about instilling a habit
What do we
amongst
do?
the generation, right?
Yeah.
So Aman, can I just intrude in that?
Yeah, sure.
So I have noticed one trend with the youngsters. Now, if any one of you loves Virat Kohli, उसके बारे में negative information भी आएगी, that person will say कि नहीं यार ये नहीं हो सकता, I'll have to do some cross checking. Similarly, a person who is deeply into stock market, who is deeply invested, उसके पास एक random information आएगी कि Reliance खरीद लो, वो कहेगा यार 1 मिनट देखता हूँ. So आपके interest के हिसाब से भी होता है. Sometimes I am interested in particular subject, I would like to fact check. But yes, there are a lot of times when I'm not interested. I will just like to just forward it. So I personally feel WhatsApp University से थोड़ा सा निकल के, if we do the fact checking, which I think we all should do.
Fair point, I know.
Apart from the things we are interested in, we do follow, pass on blindly.
Thank you so much. Can we take 1 or 2 questions, Sahib?
Check.
Okay, at the back.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's one question.
Unfortunately, due to the paucity of time, my sincerest apologies. Before we can move on to the questions, I must request the audience to ask questions and not to state opinions. Right? If we have any question about any of the things that the panel has discussed, it's more than welcome. Please do not state opinions. Please.
Yes,
Let's
I
pass
think
on the
we
mic.
One at the back has been asking for a very long time.
Yeah,
to start.
one at the back, please. Can we
Maybe
get him a
these
mic?
two questions quickly and briefly.
Can we get him a mic, please?
Check.
Hello guys. So my question for you is, there are more than 800 news channels. So what makes your news channel different from others? As one of my teachers said that आज के टाइम पे न्यूज़ चैनल अगर आप खोल रहे हो तो ये वेस्ट ऑफ मनी या वेस्ट ऑफ टाइम है. सो आपके चैनल्स को क्या मतलब एक यूनिक बनाता है, क्या चीज़? एंड अगर मुझे कभी
Maybe he's talking about the driving
I think accuracy is just first up right there, because we're talking about how fact checking and everything is important. So if you're providing accurate information, people will come back to you. If you're giving them something which is a bit of a solution oriented or something which is a good learning for them, they will absolutely come back to you. And not just noise, but something that really, impacts your life on an everyday basis. If you see all of that, you will come back to that channel.
I think the gentleman's question has been misinterpreted. He means to ask about the driving force behind it and also on the business end, how it is beneficial. Is that what you're asking about? Then be a little bit more elaborate with your question.
ऑलराइट मैम. सो इफ़ बाई चांस मुझे फ्यूचर में क्या बोलते हैं अपना न्यूज़ चैनल खोलना है ना, तो ऐसा क्या चीज़ करूं जो एक वो उसको यूनिकनेस दे एंड वो पॉपुलर हो जाए मेरा न्यूज़ चैनल. अगर मैं
आपका
कुछ कहूं.
सब्जेक्ट आपको अगर अच्छे से आता है वो पॉपुलर हो जाए.
नहीं, और आपको पॉपुलर होने से पहले यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दैट एम आई नंबर वन अ गुड जर्नलिस्ट, नंबर टू एम आई इंटरेस्टेड इन पुटिंग द फैक्ट्स आउट देयर, number three, you do real journalism, you do good journalism, present the facts as they are and let people make their opinions and decide, as opposed to just going on and doing debates after debates after debate. That is just a perspective. The minute you do great ground reporting and the minute you are doing your bit to be the right interlocutor between the government and the elected representatives in case you want to start a political news channel, I think you've done your bit. Then don't worry about the popularity. There are people like Gaurav who have to get the money in who'll worry about it.
See, if you're able to add value to somebody's life with the information that you're providing, you'll always find success. It's not about being number one, number two, but where do you want to add value? To whose life you want to add value? If you have those answers, you'll have complete clarity in terms of what your USP should be.
If you get into trying to make a news channel to become the most popular, you will fail. You need to go in with the intention of making a great product, and that product will on its own sell itself.
Thank you so much, Deb. I think one more question.
Thank you so much. So basically, it is always said that we younger generation use the Instagram reels and we go for reels for 30-second or 60-second reel. When at the same time, when we go for a YouTube video and when it becomes a 1 minute, 1 second video, our mind says, let's skip it. So at the same time, when we have to consume a large amount of news and we have to consume a real news, a fact check news as well. But me as a student always checks the news whether it is right or wrong. But when we are talking about the suburban areas or the rural areas of India, we found it that the youth generation is getting the news that is half news, not getting the actual and the logical reasons behind it. So my question to all of you is that what should be the right strategy to the audience of the younger generation of the rural areas that they should consume the right news instead of having a misinformation?
Fantastic.
You are asking from the viewer's point of view कि viewer की क्या strategy होनी चाहिए और from the publisher's point of view that how should publishers publish their news जिससे वो अच्छी fact check news?
In both the ways, basically from the viewer's view and from the publisher's
From the
view.
rural areas.
Yeah.
So from the rural areas, as said by my fellow panelists again and again, I believe print is the best medium. But obviously, it was a fantastic question that you asked, because now the internet has spread to rural areas, tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And even the rural audience, because I visit my ancestral village quite often, and even they are consuming news via WhatsApp, via YouTube, mostly, as I find it. So, if I were to suggest, because to the audience that I am suggesting at this moment, I don't see any faces who will be, passing on this suggestion to the rural people. But if I were to suggest, I would say that the print still serves as the best. My fellow panelists were saying that ठीक है print बहुत अच्छा fact check करके publish करता है, but when they were saying this, I believe they were talking about the English print, because I also make it a case that I read 2 Hindi newspapers daily. I find a lot of misinformation even there. I'm so sorry to say this. And news channels का तो कहना ही क्या है? I'm a part of it. I know how news is created and spread. So, सबसे बेस्ट मीडियम किसी भी टियर 2 सिटी या किसी गांव में रहने वाले स्टूडेंट का होना चाहिए उसके, आई बिलीव, उसके टीचर्स, उसके एजुकेटर्स, उसके लोकल लीडर्स, और वहाँ से ये इन्फॉर्मेशन निकलनी चाहिए कि अगर आप यूट्यूब से न्यूज़ कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं तो वो कौन से एवेन्यूज़ हैं, वो कौन से यूट्यूब चैनल्स हैं. एज चैती सेड कि बहुत सारे इंडिपेंडेंट कंटेंट क्रिएटर्स बहुत सुंदर काम कर रहे हैं. सो आई बिलीव दैट दीज पीपल, व्हेन आई से दीज पीपल, इट मीन्स that 70% or 80% of India's populations that lives in those areas, these people, our people, have to be educated about getting the news from the right sources. And those right sources, I am sorry to say, most of the times are not Hindi newspapers. They have to be internet. Now, how you aware them is a different question altogether.
From a publisher's standpoint, I'll also say regional media plays a very huge role. The more multilingual newspapers and publishing platforms we have, the better informed the entire electorate will be. I'll give you a small example. Sometimes you realize that the best ground reporting and the best stories actually something that national news is picking up from that regional newspaper out there. So I would never underestimate a smaller publication. I would never underestimate a good brand which is multilingual in nature, which is catering to the least common denominator. And from a publisher's standpoint, to me, that is gold standard, because legacy media today sometimes realizes there have been so many misses which we come to know when we open the regional newspaper.
Ma'am, at the same time, as a sir
My
stated-
sincerest apologies. I believe the panelists are going to stick around for the next couple of minutes, and maybe we can have a one-on-one conversation about that. But for now, I believe Gaurav had something to add. He picked up the mic twice. So briefly, maybe if you can just complete that.
I'll just keep myself very brief. From a strategy point of view, I think what needs to be done from the side of media is to keep your news very simple for an easy comprehension, not to layer it, not to make it complicated. That's one. Second, sometimes the issues of that area, of that audience, is going to be very different from the issues of a different area, urban audience, etc. So you need to pick up the right topic. Again, going back to the same point, where you're able to add value. If you're able to create a strategy around it, of course, the news that you deliver will be useful for them.
I believe Anu also had something to add on to that briefly.
So, as per the studies that I have read, regional news is doing much better than Hindi and English genre, okay? Now, your question was rural. आपका question था misinformation rural areas में कैसे करना पाऊँ, वो नहीं हो सकती. I'm not going to mince my words. Now, if you expect एक गांव वाला है, उसके पास एक WhatsApp forward आता है and वो उसको कैसे comprehend करेगा, वो वैसे ही comprehend करेगा वो जैसे वो उसके पास पहुंचा है. He will not use his brain ये ठीक है या गलत है. So if you ask me rural area में how it's going to stop the misinformation, it can only come from center if we have a social media guidelines on the fact checking in everything and how it should not get penetrated into this. The polarization and etc. is happening only because of no fact checking which is going on into the rural areas. And there is no way I see that stopping. So there's a difference between regional and there's a difference between rural.